The mining industry's ability to create a positive impact on the environment has been cast into the spotlight this year. Joining me to discuss further is Ro. Ro, thank you so much for your time. So the main focus for the ICMM this year is creating a nature-positive future. Let's talk about what a nature-positive future is.
Nature-positive mining, people think that's an oxymoron, can't be done, but it can. If we can demonstrate that where we mine, nature will be no worse off because we are there, that's a nature-positive future. Now, the world has recognized through the Global Biodiversity Framework that we must halt and reverse the loss of nature. 1 million species are at risk of extinction, and mining has a long history of both positive and negative actions on nature. The commitment that ICMM members have made is that at all sites that we operate, by the time we close them, there will be no net loss of biodiversity relative to a 2020 baseline. That's so important because people want the confidence that although the metals we produce are so critical, we're not going to leave nature worse off as a result of our mining activities. And we go beyond our own operations to make sure that our suppliers are also measuring their impact and dependency on nature. So the net result is, when we look back in 10 years, we can say that the mining industry is part of the solution, not just part of the problem.
With that said then, I mean, you've made some positive statements there, some strong statements. How do we rectify the damage of the past?
First, by recognizing that we have caused damage. And that's maybe a slightly controversial thing to say because it's not easy for us to acknowledge that as an industry, we haven't always gotten things right. But it's plain for everybody to see. There are thousands of abandoned mines. There are many floodplains that are contaminated with metal waste, and that's because of poor practices of the past. So by acknowledging it, we can hold ourselves accountable and allow others to hold us accountable. Part of our commitment is that members will disclose their performance on the metrics that we have set out and that they will obtain external assurance over those disclosures. That's a core part of being a responsible mining company, is that you make your performance transparent and others can hold you to account. Plus, I think collectively we are going to have to work on remedying the past bad actions and to make sure that even if we weren't the ones responsible for the state of affairs, we have a responsibility to help clean it up.
I'm glad you brought up commitments. How do we make sure that the commitments that have been made are actually achievable, and is there a time frame?
You know, we spent 2 years working on these commitments. These weren't just things we came up on the spur of the moment because we had to work through the practical detail of what it's going to take to deliver them. Because I think generally in the world, people have gone out and made commitments without having thought about how they will be delivered. That's not the case with us. The second thing we've done is this is signed personally by the chief executives of 24 of the world's largest mining companies. This isn't somebody in some sustainability department or CSR department that's had to make this commitment. The CEO has personally signed off on those. That reflects a level of personal accountability that perhaps people would be surprised by. And finally, the level of disclosure that companies have committed to make, including with TNFD. TNFD is the Task Force on Nature-Related Financial Disclosures, means that we will be essentially leading the pack when it comes to other industries on how open we are willing to be on our performance.
Greenwashing is one of the main issues that comes to the fore, especially in the ESG space. How do we take everything that you've just said and use it as an opportunity to address that?
We have no time for greenwashing. And if people think that we're in the business of greenwashing, they absolutely should raise that objection, and we will make sure that we address it very clearly. Because the point of doing this is to say, here's what we are prepared to do, here are the actions we're going to take, and here's how we will demonstrate to you whether or not we have met those actions. So for example, in our disclosures, members will say, on this measure, I'm not yet fully meeting the expectation. And here's what I'm going to do to close that gap. So we're not here pretending like we've made these commitments and we're going to achieve them all in the time frame we've set them. That's the ambition. But things happen, and where we haven't met those commitments, we are committing to being transparent about that. Because the claim of greenwashing is that you're saying you're doing something, but you're not actually doing it. And I think we can have a grown-up conversation about the fact that doing these things is hard. And sometimes with the best will in the world, you're not going to get to where you thought you would. So for us, transparency and accountability is at the heart of this commitment and every other commitment that ICMM has made, and we have no tolerance for greenwashing.
Transparency and accountability, Ro. Thank you so much for your time.
My pleasure.